Hello, lovelies. Last time when there were Brexit shenanigans, I didn't immediately do a video on it, and got told off by you, my audience, for not doing so. So, yeah, I guess I better do something. Right, we're in another particularly high activity tumult of Brexity stuff at the moment. Last night, a vote was held for Parliament to take control of proceedings. We've had this before, but it bears repeating. Okay, it was a vote so that Parliament can have a vote. Okay, so it's a mechanism by which Parliament can take control of the order of business. Because normally the order of business in Parliament is set by the government, by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, the ministers, right? They're the ones who control it. But this vote went through, and so Parliament is now in control of the agenda, and today they are going to have a vote on whether to rule out no deal. So yesterday was the vote so they can have a vote. I know it's all very arcane and peculiar, but there you go. But it went through. It was won. Bojo had threatened to expel any Tory party members, Tory party representatives, Tory party MPs who had supported the motion. Now its majority had already dropped to zero because at the beginning of business yesterday, a Tory MP crossed the chamber and joined the Liberal Democrats, which means that the government has a majority of precisely zero. The vote was held, 20 to 30, I can't remember the exact number, but a good number of Tory MPs voted in order to take control. And to his credit, Bojo did what he threatened and threw them all out of the party. Touch hypocritical, given he voted against May's government on multiple occasions. But there you go. He followed through and he threw them out. And there's a couple of rather significant people amongst the rebels. Ken Clarke towers above the rest. I've always had a soft spot for Ken Clarke, and I've always wondered why he was in the Tory party, because he's very much a compassionate conservative, one nation sort of Tory, with a lot more liberal views. Yeah, all of our best politicians have been fond of a drink. You look at Churchill. You look at past leaders of the Liberal Democrats and so on. There's something about alcoholism that makes for a good political leader. Maybe we should be selecting on that basis. But regardless, he delivered an absolutely blistering speech, and he completely skewered Rees-Mogg, who was lounging on the couches at the time. Yeah, good man. He should be the leader of any interim government. There's absolutely no question left in my mind at this point as to that. He's got the stature, he's got the rhetorical skill, he has the respect of people across both sides. So there you go. But yeah, so they were all expelled. So the government now has a majority of something like minus 21. You got to remember that that's effectively doubled if they fight against the government. Yeah, so interesting. But the reason I haven't made videos necessarily on day-to-day sort of Brexit stuff is because it all moves so quickly. So as a result of the vote to have a vote, we now have a vote today which would be to rule out no deal. Probably going to pass. Fairly squeakily, I would think, but it's probably going to pass. Bojo has threatened in the event that legislation is passed that he will move to hold an election. But since the Fixed Term Parliament Act, not that parliaments have been particularly fixed term since it came in, but still, the intent is to make it more regular, the election, so everyone knows when it's going to happen, everyone can key up, and that there's not so much of an advantage for the government, the party that happens to be in power. But in order to call an early election, he needs something like 2/3 support in Parliament. Probably get it, because Corbyn, in kamikaze style, wants an election. And has been banging on about how much he wants an election for a long time. I think it's a bad idea. I think it will be an extremely bitter and divisive election. I think The advantage will very much be the Tories. They've got a little bit of a Boris bounce left, though that's disappearing. And the Brexit Party has already said that they will enter into an alliance with the Conservative Party and won't contest seats, provided Bojo goes for a no-deal exit in the election, which seems likely. Also, leaked documents about plans for an election from the Tory party have come through, and they seem to be planning to move even further to the right by targeting things like LGBT rights, trans rights, that sort of thing. Wedge issues, I think you call them in the States. So they're planning to shift even further right. And also a lot of traitor rhetoric and so on is likely to be thrown around. There's a slight spanner in the works in that all these expelled Tory party people are probably still going to stand, probably still have support from their local parties and so forth, and so that's going to split the vote in interesting ways. On the other side of the equation, we have a rainbow coalition of minor parties who all seem to have agreed, that basically they're not going to contest where they have no chance of winning against anyone on the current opposition. But Labour are still saying they're going to contest every seat. So not playing the game, not putting the country first. They want a flat-out win, which they're unlikely to get in the current circumstances. So we're likely to end up with another coalition, either a Tory Brexit Party coalition or probably a Labour Lib Dem coalition, maybe. Hopefully people would swallow their pride. So yeah, that's the likely outcome is we have the vote today and it passes probably fairly narrowly to rule out no deal. I could be wrong. As a result of that, Bojo says he'll go for an election. That's probably going to go through as well, even though I don't think it should. Then we'll probably see the EU offer an extension. That's likely to be to the end of January. Then we have an extremely bitter and divisive election with a lot of traitor rhetoric, with a lot of dangerously 1930s language being thrown around. We know the Tories are going to fight dirty. Hopefully the opposition can come together around the national interest. And then it's anybody's guess as to what happens then. I have no idea. None at all what the result of such an election would be. Only 1/3 of the country wants a hard no-deal Brexit. The Lib Dems are likely to surge, the other minor parties are likely to surge, but unfortunately that's more likely to be at the expense of Labour than the Tories. So we'll see. And all this traitor rhetoric, if there are any traitors in that chamber, it's the Labour MPs that moved over and voted with the government. The Lexiteers need to be thrown out of Labour. And you can go and sit with the Tories if you like. Bugger off. Because at this point, it takes a degree of willful stupidity that I am no longer willing to tolerate to think Brexit is a good idea. They must know it's going to harm their communities. They must know it's going to make things worse for poor people. They must know that these shortages and so on that are in prospect are going to hit their communities most. They must know that Brexit so far has hit their communities the most. The car manufacturing. A lot of people in Labour areas now work on service desks. A lot of these towns and cities that used to be industrial went post-industrial, and a lot of them do call centres and things. Services stand to be hit the hardest by Brexit, and no deal Brexit in particular. May's deal was in part so fucking terrible because it would have hit services while preserving industries that we don't particularly do a lot. We do banking, we do services. Anything else is an afterthought in Britain pretty much. But yeah, there you go. So that's what's likely to happen. What should happen? We should have a vote to rule out no deal. Corbyn should then, in my opinion, hold a vote of no confidence in the government and try to form a broad coalition, a government of national unity from the opposition and the Tory defectors, and withdraw Article 50, get things back on track a little, and then call an election. That's what should happen, ideally. But that government of national unity, I don't think anyone will ever coalesce around that, provided Corbyn puts himself forwards. I think someone like Ken Clarke, especially now he's been thrown out of the Tory party, shown himself to be a man of principle and everything. I think he and has respect on all sides of the house. I think he's the guy. He is the guy. but that's not going to happen. So here we go. So yeah, just to recap, all those years ago now, we had a referendum. I'm all for referenda, but we don't have a lot of experience with them in this country, and we need to figure them out better. It was a non-binding referendum, which means it was only ever advised to Parliament, and it was only won very narrowly, at least in part due to still unquantified levels of massive overspending from the Leave campaign and dodgy data tactics by Cambridge Analytica and so on, which probably have broken the law, not just electoral law. This isn't just my opinion, this is the opinion of the High Court. Why wasn't the result overturned? Two technicalities. One, the corruption did not come into anyone's consciousness until 3 months after the vote, and there is a 3-month window in which you can make a full, proper legal challenge to an electoral result. Problem. Second problem, because it was only an advisory vote and because the government is not bound to respect it, because it has no legal force, you can't overturn it despite the illegality and everything, because it has no power other than the power that we give it. So we have a narrow, illegal referendum on vague terms, never on no deal, being attempted to be enforced by a government that hasn't been elected, hasn't faced the ballot box, and seeks to do so by bypassing Parliament. If there is a democratic deficit here, it is not amongst the Remain camp. It is very much amongst the Leave camp, and all that rhetoric about democracy and respecting the will of the people, it's all clearly bullshit given everything that's happened since. So what's left? No, really, what's left? What argument for Brexit is left at this point? Don't like foreigners? It's about all that's left. I am exhausted with Brexit, I'm sure you all are too. Whatever I've said in this video is likely to be completely overturned by events this evening. My partner's constantly asking me to explain what's going on because, you know, I know politics and history and I have an interest in all this. I have to keep saying I don't know, because the whole rule book is out the window. It's confusing even for those of us slightly in the know, but there you go. Muted Zang, but Zang nonetheless.
I don't like the, I have, okay, like a lot of you, I hate a lot, you know? But I hate with style and creativity. Yeah!